We are now recording. Okay. Oh, let's get to our class. All right, good morning, all. We are finding ourselves in week 2. So once again, just as a review, make sure that you always go right here to the far right, and you will have announcements for your week that you're in, so we're in week 2. So what do we need to do for week 2? There's a week 2 discussion post on geography. I don't want to open it up right now because there's some folks that have done it. So I don't want to show their work. It's very good. Make sure that you respond to at least 2 other classmates. Make sure that you do your own work for your week 2 discussion post. It does focus on geography. Okay. Make sure also that you download your syllabus for your own records if you need it. But for week 2, week 2, where am I at? Week 2, your discussion will be right here. Week 2, right at the top. Your discussion post is right there. I also have that instructional video if you would like to read that on the introduction of the Old Testament. I believe it is from your authors, and we will have some pages right here just in case you don't have the book just yet. And I can't say that I am perfect with this scanning, but I do have a few pages. A couple of students are still looking for their book, a few pages for the reading if you need it. Okay, and a few pages on chapter 2 if you need it. So that is all in the week 2, October 10th module. Okay, so today we are going to kick off our discussion about geography. I want to start off with a very short video. I just want to show you some maps. So one of the key things with this particular chapter, when we talk about geography, which is very important, the land, and I think when we opened this up last class period, Old Testament reading can be kind of difficult because you don't understand the people and the land is so far away. This is not North America. You're trying to figure out where are these places. These places are very unfamiliar to us. It's very far away from us. Old and New Testament locations. So it can be difficult. And when we talk about the geography, the land is different. They didn't have land like what we're experiencing over here. They got their food different ways. We go to the grocery store, or even, if we had farms where we grew up, even farming for us, no matter how old we are, farming is so much different in our lifetimes and our generations than what it was in Old and New Testament, right? Trying to find food, trying to find water was way different. So I am going to share, let's see here. I can get this video up. You all just stay with me and let me do that again, y'all. All right. Somebody's going to give me a thumbs up when you see this video appear on the screen. Okay, you should see like a little map on your screen. Can you all see that?
I don't see it yet.
You can see it?
No, I can't.
No. Okay. Huh. Let me do it again. I don't know what happens when I share the content. Okay, I'm going to try this again. And somebody let me know when you see a video on the screen. It should have a little Bible in a hand.
I can see it.
All right.
Yes, that's
Okay, super. All right. Thank you. I didn't want to move on and you all couldn't see it. Sometimes things work kind of strange with Teams. All right, everybody. We are just going to do a quick introduction with this video. I may not play all of it for you. Let's see if I can turn this volume up.
That we need to hold in our minds
when we're reading it. And there are really only two maps that we There is a geography of the Bible as well as a history of the Bible that we need to hold in our minds when we're reading it. And there are really only two maps that we need, a map of the whole Middle East and a map of the Promised Land in the Middle East. Now, the familiar name that is given to the overall map of the Middle East is the Fertile Crescent. And what it does is it links two very large rivers at each end, the River Nile and the two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. So these are very fertile valleys, the Nile Delta, and then the Tigris and the Euphrates, what used to be called Mesopotamia, which means the middle of the rivers. Now then, these two fertile areas were the centers of power in the ancient world. These were the East and West world powers. So the whole Old Testament is a struggle between these two world powers, between Egypt and the different empires that arose here, notably Assyria and Babylon, and in between the Promised Land. Now you notice that the Arabian Desert covers all of this and the Sahara there. So when these two big powers attacked each other or tried to overcome each other, they had to travel through this narrow bit of land here. All the traffic was directed down this narrow coastal strip, which means that this was the crossroads of the world, actually. The road from Europe comes down the coast, it crosses the plain of Esdraelon, goes down into the Jordan Valley, and up onto the other side and down to Arabia. The road from Africa comes up the coastal plain, and it crosses over the same Vale of Esdraelon, or the Valley of Jezreel, and goes up through Capernaum and up through Damascus and on to India and China. So that the actual crossroads of the world is precisely there, at a little hill called Megiddo. And the hill of Megiddo in Hebrew is Harmageddon. And that's why most of the big battles in history took place there, at the crossroads of the world. Overlooking that crossroads is a little village called Nazareth. And a boy of Nazareth could watch the world go by. He could lie on the hill as a boy, like being in an airport lounge, where you see all the nationalities coming and going. That's why they call this northern part Galilee of the nations, because it was an international crossroads. Whereas further south up in the hills, it was very isolated and very Jewish. And Jerusalem is right up in them there hills. So you had two parts of the Promised Land, the international part, where all the nations came and went, and this very Jewish, isolated part up in the hills with Jerusalem. So you can see the importance of this land. God was going to plant his people at the crossroads of the world, where everybody could see them, where they could be a model of the kingdom of heaven on earth. So the whole world could see what blessing comes to people living under God's rule. But they would also see what curse comes of disobeying God's rule.
All right, let me take this down. I wanted to open up with that video talking about geography. I'm going to share that. Good morning, Dejanir. I'm going to share that video with you after class is over in your announcement section if you want to watch it or share it with other people. Let's just pause right there as I'm transitioning. I'm going to pull up our PowerPoint. Anything strike you as interesting in that presentation? Does that locations are key, right?
Yes, Miss Berry.
Yes. Okay, let me stay.
Yes, I like to say that on a tour I went to, I called it Megiddo. He pronounced it differently, but I've been
Yes.
there.
Oh, tell
Yes,
us about it.
it's beautiful. It sits like up on a hill and it overlooks the Dead Sea. It's actually where Solomon, I believe they said, had his stalls where he positioned his horses.
Wow.
Megiddo. Yes.
Wow.
A beautiful
Uh,
place.
Beautiful place. And so with Old Testament geography, some of the key things that I want you to remember is the lands are so important. But when I saw this video, it put a lot of things in perspective for me as well as an instructor and for you guys as students of Old Testament. Location is key. Location is key. The people in the area are so important. So you're going to ask yourself, who's there? Water is important. Let's see if you remember. What were some of the rivers that the gentleman spoke about? Some of those important rivers.
The Nile,
The Nile, Euphrates.
Mesopotamia.
Tiger,
Tigris, right? I heard now, Mesopotamia, Euphrates. I said now, Tigris. Okay. And as you're reading in your Old Testament literature, as you're reading some of those scriptures, you're going to see these places and these rivers. Water is important because water moves things. Water fertilizes the crops. And if they're not near water, what do you think is going to happen to the people if they're not near the water?
They're eventually going to have to move out.
They're going to have to move out. Because water for them, look, for us, we go to our bathroom and we flush it. We can take a shower. We don't have to go get water. Amen. But they needed water to drink. They needed water to wash. They need water for doing their hair, all types of things. And they had to go, imagine having to walk miles and miles and miles to bring water back home. Okay, so we talked about water, rivers, deserts. Deserts are very important because think about the land. Now, many times when we're reading Old Testament, once again, it's weird, it's strange to us because you're like, I'm living in, we're in Atlanta, we're in Valdosta, we're in metropolitan areas. And even if we came from rural areas, it sure wasn't like what we're reading in the Old Testament. Desert, anybody been to desert areas? Even in the United States, you're not going to find the luxuries that you're going to have in a city. Okay, but one of the key things, we're going to go to our PowerPoint. Did you hear what the narrator mentioned about the crossroads of the world? Did you hear that? As he talked about the crossroads of the world. And you get that part of that northern part of Africa, excuse me, y'all, that Middle Eastern area. And the crossroad area was what? Did you catch what that city was? Nazareth.
Nazareth.
Yeah. So as we talk about geography, every place that you read in the Old Testament is not happenstance as well as new. All of the places have importance. All right, let's jump into it. When we talk about geography, as the narrator said in our video that we just watched, pay attention to water, pay attention to the rivers. We said this earlier, Tigris, Euphrates. Oh my, we keep hearing about this area even today, Persian Gulf. We talked about Mesopotamia, the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Egypt, this is going into Africa. Nile River, okay? So let's talk about the Old Testament. Let's talk about the people. So in the Old Testament, we're primarily discussing a particular group of people. They are called the Israelites or the Jews or Jewish individuals, but we are not chronicling Christians just yet. Christians will come over in the New Testament based on the foundation that's going to be set in the Old, based on the patriarchs that do miraculous work in the Old Testament in establishing relationship with the Creator God. That's going to move into Christianity in the New Testament. Okay, so as we said, location is key. When we read the Old Testament, this is what we can focus now on the Middle East, what we would call more Middle East in 2022. Okay. So you see Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, would be to the north over here in the yellow. You got Egypt over here to the west. Okay. The Arabian Peninsula would be towards the south. And just think about all of these areas. Here's another thing that I want you to think about too, y'all. I want you to think about travel in geography, in Old and New Testament. But I want you to think, since we're Old Testament, of course, I want you to think about travel in these areas. No cars, no trains, no buses. Everybody's traveling how? How are these people traveling?
Donkeys,
Or by foot,
Or ship?
donkeys.
donkeys.
Right. Probably a donkey, maybe some type
Camel.
of horse, camel, and they're on foot. Somebody said ship. Yes, I'm sure they had some type of vessels to get across water. And think about these vessels. I'm sure these vessels may not have been, I'm sure weren't great vessels, but they were the best at what they could use. All right, let's use a picture here. I want you to look at the right-hand side of the screen. Let me see if I can get this. Look at the right-hand side of the screen. Isn't this beautiful? This is a picture, a modern picture. This is a modern picture of the Fertile Crescent. And it's just that, isn't it fertile? It's lush and green. And this area, this area includes like the Nile River Valley. So it's getting water from the river. So along that Mediterranean coast. When we talk about geography, one of the key things that we see over and over again is in metaphors or illustrations of the land, of hills, of valleys, of mountains. So if you look on the right-hand side, let me see if I get my cursor. You see right here where I am? This is like a little small, well, we could probably call it a hill, but maybe a little mountain there, very mountainous region. This area was considered kind of dry and barren. Life wasn't always very easy for them in this area. All right, now let's go over to the west, to Egypt. And I got my pyramids back up there again, Miss Janice. So Egypt is located where?
In Africa.
In Africa. And it's interesting, a lot of people, our young people too, you said, where's Egypt? And they're thinking like Middle East, what? Okay, well, yeah, but it is located all on the continent of Africa. Egypt is considered and called the gift of the Nile. And it's very important that we start here in this Old Testament course here in Africa, in Egypt. And it's important also to recognize that there is a strong African presence in the Old Testament. As Christianity has moved throughout the years, and many of us may have our different practices or different denominations. Sometimes the mention or the background of Africa in Christianity or in the Old Testament, should I say in the Bible, is not mentioned the way that it should. Okay, so I want you as Bible scholars to, as you're educating people, let people know, yeah, Egypt is there. Egypt is in Africa. I think sometimes we just have this thing like it's pushed over to the Middle East. Okay, so the Nile River was a great source of water for the Egyptians. In ancient Egypt, not necessarily now, but ancient Egypt was divided into two kingdoms, the upper kingdom and the lower kingdom. Okay, not that way now. And as we said earlier, I want to say this was in our other class, we were talking about the pyramids, but Oh my goodness, Egyptian culture is so rich with education, with religion, with inventions, with theology. So as we continue to study, we are going to see, well, you may not get it in this class. In our next class, when we talk about, if you take Christian history, we are going to see great theologians come out of Egypt. And so remember, these people were brown like us. Okay. All right, let's take a look at modern day Palestine. Look at the picture on the right. Modern day Palestine. Palestine was named after a group of people called the Philistines. And one of the key things also in Old Testament literature, you're like, who are all these people? And these people look, I mean, you know, is this group and that group and that group and that group. So remember, there many times they're named after, you know, say like Canaanites, they're named after the land. Okay, Philistines, or, you know, so they're named after a particular land where they lived. Okay. This land is also known as, also called Canaan. Canaan. Okay. So the land is, if you see this land over to the right, this is modern day. It didn't look like that then, of course. But the land was divided into 4 regions, Palestine. And the regions were very different. There was like a hilly country. There were coastal plains. That's what's called the Transjordan Plateau and the Jordan Rift. So when we read about Palestine, when we read about Canaan, when you read about all of the places, please understand that these locations, their land, their soil is not like ours. It's very rocky. If you are along water, you're doing good, but very hilly. Very hilly. Even in the New Testament, we, you know, you see mention of them moving through hills or going up on hills or going up on mountains. Same thing for Old Testament as well. They moved around a lot. And, you know, without the type of modern conveniences that we have. All right, everybody. Let's open our microphone. Anybody heard of the Jordan River? Jordan River. All right, see some
I
heads.
have.
Yeah.
I just want to say I was baptized in the Jordan.
You know what? I was going to ask you on your trip. Oh my goodness. I can just,
Cold, very cold, very,
oh, just
very
like the
cold.
song.
Just like the song. Because Mount Hermon is snow-capped there, and the water from Mount Hermon flows down the side of the mountain, and it go through the valley, and it forms the Jordan River. And the Jordan River is very, very cold.
My goodness, look at this. So right here, as Janice was mentioning, if you see my little, a little pencil right here. So I wanted to point out in the distance, and I can't say how far the distance is because in this picture, it looked like it's right over there, but it's probably far, far away, is a mountain, Mount Hermon.
Mhm.
Mount Hermon. And y'all think about it. Y'all been to the mountains or you've seen mountains even here in the United States. Snow, you know, because they're high up. So, you know, if you ever been to like Asheville or something like that, even in this area, or we've got mountains in Georgia, up by Tennessee, you know, but anyway, yes, it's going to be cooler. So the river is very significant in Old and New Testament. Somebody, we're going to stay right here for a minute. You can use your computer or if you can use your phone. Tell me a little bit, anybody know a little bit about the Jordan River? Okay, I'm gonna give you one. If anybody's adding on, just jump right in there. Remember, the Israelites crossed it into the promised land. So they crossed over in the Jordan into the promised land. And somebody was of big significance in the New Testament was baptized there. Anybody?
That's where John baptized Jesus.
There you go.
Okay.
Mhm.
Bingo. Bingo. Big significance. Water, rivers are so important in the Old and New Testament. But as we're talking about Old, the water is so important. All right. Isn't that beautiful though? That is just beautiful. Just a beautiful sight. All right. Let's talk about routes. Let's talk about trade routes. Did I skip over anybody? I apologize. Anybody wanted to add to Jordan River? Okay. Okay, let's talk about trade routes. Let's talk about how they moved around. So remember, Old Testament folks, they were, yes, very smart, and they were conducting business just like we do today. But remember, they had to do their business very differently than what we do now. And so, of course, there was no Amazon to order things. They couldn't go to the grocery store. They couldn't go to, what do we call it? My husband's favorite place, Lowe's or Home Depot, right? To get your to get your supplies. They had to walk, and they had to figure out how they could get something from someone else and then to trade off their goods. So their commerce, the way that they did their trade was through walking along trade routes. And so Palestine was a prime location because it was in the middle of Africa and Asia. It was in the middle. And so I want you to also think about that as I go to this next point. When you have a trade route, let's just think about that. A trade route. So you're going to see trade routes come up in Old Testament and New Testament is very important. All right. And just think about it. Palestine is located in the middle of Africa and Asia. So you're going to have, it's almost like in Atlanta, we have, the interchanges of highways and one connects to another one. Okay. So things are going to be happening in the middle. Conflicts are going to be happening in the middle because you got folks coming from either side. So let's just pause. You can open your microphones. Trade routes. What do you think could be happening or happen, I guess I should say, along these trade routes? Were these trade routes always safe?
No.
No.
No. No. So yes, you're gonna have some good business people, but you're also gonna have some shady business people.
Also, Professor, the religious difference, you're going to have different religions coming together.
Very good. Very good. Now, we didn't get to this, but I do want to open it up. Thank you, Marshall. Did you hear what he said? Not just different people, but also different religious backgrounds. So everybody on the earth at that time in Old Testament, y'all, was not necessarily Hebrew, was not necessarily an Israelite. So there were other people in the Old Testament following other things, following other religious ways. And so that also causes conflict with them too. So you're also going to see, very good, you're also going to see that several groups of people are going to try to control the land. Why? Because this land means money. And if I got this route to go up here, only my people can go through here and we can do our trade with that person up there. And I'm tired of these other people coming through here and messing up my grass. You know how it is. So they try to control land for two reasons: money or economic reasons, or for military, for power.
Professor Barry, is it supposed to be on slide 3?
Uh-oh, yes. So tell me what you guys see. I'm sorry.
The same.
Do you see trade routes?
No.
No, you still have that fertile crescent up there.
Thank you. I don't know what happens with this. Thank you. I appreciate that because, okay, what about now?
Yeah,
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Always stop me if if something isn't right. We know these things sometimes are not smart. But anyway, what I just talked about is on the first 1, 2, 3 bullet points. All right, so remember that with these groups of people that are trying to control land, geography is important. Remember, I'm on point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are controlling the land for economic or military power reasons. So anybody ever get confused with the Old Testament and you like, they just keep doing all this killing. This group kills this group goes over there to their land and kills them. This group goes over here and kills them. Anybody ever thought that? Is it just me?
You know, they wanted power.
They wanted power. They wanted power. And it's not to say that that was right to go around and killing folks, but we but we understand through our scholarly research of the Old Testament. I mean, Old Testament, it's just one conflict after the next. And this land over here, and God gave them this land, and then this group came over there and took it, and they killed them. I mean, it is a constant battle, war going on. That's the reason why. All right. Trade and commerce established also a merchant class of people, wealthy people. Now think about it. If you are, if you can trade goods, if you can trade materials, if you can trade wood, if you can trade animals, that's going to make you a better off than the person who doesn't have anything, right? And you're going to see this power struggle towards the end of the Old Testament, especially you hear a lot of the prophets, major and minor prophets in the Old Testament start to speak out against the wealthy people and tell them, you know, look, God is not pleased with you and you got all these riches and you're beating up on people and you're hurting people and you're not you know, supporting the temple and things like that. A lot of the prophets speak out on the wealthy class. Not that having wealth was bad, but they were abusing people. They were not doing what they should have done with their wealth. And they began to oppress the poor. So I also put down there, these rich people begin to oppress the poor. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah. That's
Yeah. Nothing new under the sun is. So that one of the reasons, not one of the reasons, one of the many reasons for prophets, Jeremiah, Joel, Amos speaks out a lot about this as well. They get so sick of this wealthy class of people, and they call themselves, you know, loving God, but they are not loving God, and they hurt the poor people in the land. And unfortunately, we have not learned our lesson, right?
amen.
Let me know if you can see my next slide. It says Palestine, also known as Canaan.
Yes.
All right, look like
Yeah.
I'm working pretty good now, okay. Palestine, also known as Canaan. And it's interesting, we moved to a new development a couple of years ago, and the first part of the name is Canaan. So I said, we're in the promised land. This is the promised land here. And so Canaan was considered a sacred land that the Creator God gave to the Israelite people. And so this land is not just any land in the Old Testament. The land of Canaan or Palestine was the land that God gave to the Israelite people. Now, even today, Palestine is still in conflict over this land. Because one group feel like we got it and the Lord told us to have it. And then another group says, no, we want it. Power, struggle of land once again. The Creator God in the Old Testament told the Israelite people, also known as Hebrews, he told them that you got to treat this land right. And you have to worship God on this land. You can't sin on this land. And if you do, there are going to be repercussions. There are going to be punishments to you and to your people because I gave you this and then you mistreated it, right? So that's one of the things that I want you to understand from Old Testament. Eventually, the Israelite people don't hold up to their promises. They say, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And just like humans, just like us, they didn't do it. But once again, remember, in Old Testament, we're chronicling the Hebrew or the Israelite people. And the key thing, I think I said it last week, is relationship. And we see from the beginning to the end. Y'all make sure y'all look over that handout that I have for you of the 39 books of the Old Testament. From the beginning to the end of the Old Testament, the Creator God never leaves the people and always puts processes in place that the Creator can have some type of relationship with them or restore their relationship. All right, hold on. Something got hung up here. Now I can see you. I couldn't see you for a minute. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
It should say, here's some trivia.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
okay. Very good. Okay, so actually, we're going to do this together because we got enough time. It's 11:40. All right. So we are going to do some trivia. If you have your Bible with you, or if you have it on your computer or on your phone, okay, we're going to go to Genesis 2:10 through 14. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Don't worry. Genesis 2, what did I say? Verses 10 through 14. Let me get it up here. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen. All right, so I want you to pull it up so you can see it on your screen. Genesis 2:10 through 14. And for our folks who are watching the video at home, and then I want you to slide down to verse 13. But I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to have a student read this. So I'm going to pull it up on let me see if I can pull it up here and we can read it. Genesis 2. So we're going to talk about geography. 2, and what did I say? We're going to start at verse 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
10. All right, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to share that on the screen. All right, so we're going to talk about location. If you don't mind, can I get a volunteer to read verses 10 through 14? Anybody want to read that?
Well, I will.
From the
This is from the New Revised Standard Version. The river flows out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divides and becomes 4 branches. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one that flows around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one that flows around the whole land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Walter. So in our studies here this morning, this backs up location. Remember, we talked about those rivers earlier, Tigris, Euphrates, God, a river flowing flow from Eden. Okay, so we're in the book of Genesis. We're in the Garden of Eden. Now, the next thing I want you to do, you got your computers open or you got your phones with you. It said that this second river in verse 13, it said that the name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. Cush. Somebody do a search. Where is modern day Cush, or what is modern day Cush?
Egypt,
Egypt.
isn't it? Is it Egypt or
Mm,
is it Egypt or Ethiopia?
which one? You got a right answer there, but I want
Yeah.
Ethiopia?
Ethiopia. Very good. James, you had the right one. I
Yeah.
wanted to, yes.
Sudan and Egypt.
You got Sudan and Egypt.
Sudan. Some say Sudan and Egypt, but I got one that says southern Kisha covered the northern and southern region of present-day Sudan and Egypt, respectively. Distinguished from, and therefore to be distinguished from the modern-day nation of Ethiopia,
Mhm.
which lies much farther south of the Horn of Africa. But I think it's in that area.
It's in that area, yeah. You're right. So it is extending into that Sudan, Ethiopia area. So what I want you to understand is that these folks are what we call African or Nubian people.
Right.
Very good, scholars. These are Nubian people. So as we start our study with the geography, it's so important to see ourselves in the scriptures. Many times you're like, what in the world? Where are these people? I don't even understand. But when you look at these rivers, when you look at these lands, and we were saying earlier, someone said Egypt. Even we keep going back to Egypt. Tell your folks, Egypt is in Africa. Ethiopia is in Africa. All on it. So we get so let's just pause right there. Let's just pause right there. What does that say to you as an African American woman or man?
I think it's a good point. I think, particularly in years back, uh, there was this implication that Christianity was very European, when in actuality it was not only it was African and Middle East, as a matter of fact. And of course, it gets be very touchy because as we understand even from our other study how emotional people get about religion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remember, I remember back a few years ago, several years ago, a few decades ago, I think someone presented the play The Passion of Jesus, I believe they were calling it, and they used a black Jesus,
Yeah.
and wherever this was, folk just went crazy,
Wow.
crazy. But the reality is, when you look at the geography of it, and you're again open and honest with yourself,
That's it.
there's no way Jesus could have been European.
That's it.
Uh,
That's it.
so, and the interesting thing is, the interesting thing in this kind of a discussion, I find there are even some African Americans who are uncomfortable
That's right.
with with this kind of knowledge.
Yes. And you know what? Let me press that a little further, and then if somebody else wants to jump in there. James, why do you think they are uncomfortable?
Um, Part of it is learned behavior, I think, and but you know, if I thought about it because I thought about it after the example we were looking at yesterday with the when President Obama was in the picture with the Native Americans
Mhm.
and they had their dress on. One of the things that I was thinking about this afterwards, one of the things that society has done is try to, gosh, what's the word? Sort of a character, if you would, the Native Americans dress
Yes.
and make it almost like a costume.
Yeah.
That is not to take the significance out of it. So when you first look at that picture, you almost look at it, you think, oh, they sort of dressed up like Hollywood to have them dressed up.
Mm.
But what sometimes happen with those that are in power, in order to degrade, they will take seriousness, whether it's the religion or spiritual, and sort of make fun of it, if you would,
Yeah.
downgrade it, so that it loses its significance. And that's one way of maintaining control. So I think that has happened to us in a lot, in some respect, is to the more you strip things that are powerful from us,
Mhm.
mentally or in actuality, then the more control. And if you make us believe that our God could not look like us,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the more power you have.
Yeah. Good. Very good. Very good. Very good. Anybody else want to jump in there before we wrap up? What does that example of location in Africa say to you as an African American woman or man? All right, no problem. So what I want you to see in the beginning of this course as we talk about geography, and I just hate that we can't get through everything in this book, but we had to start with geography before we get to the book of Genesis, and we'll talk about that next week. We have to first of all, see ourselves in the Old Testament. First of all, see the correct location of Egypt. I don't know what it is, how sometimes over the years, Egypt has kind of moved over to the right and people have like placed it in, in Asia, but it is smack dab on the African continent. All right, everybody. So we're going to pause right here. Remember to complete for this class, the only thing you have to do, we start on Mondays, we end on Sunday nights. And you are going to complete your week 2 discussion about the importance of geography. All right. Okay. Any questions for me? No. All right. Okay, everybody, continue to have a blessed day. I'll
Thank
see you
you.
same time. Thank you. See you next Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day, everyone.
So have a good one.
Thank you. Thank